I think when we're asking the question, does God grieve? We have to define our terms. We have to define God and we have to define grief. But I
Eric,
think it's
before you move into defining our terms, because one thing arose to me is when we were defining love, you simply said, I think of love as attention. And that has really grabbed my attention. And then when you said we've already been defining grief, if we were to give a one word definition, I would also say attention. Grief is giving attention to
right.
what was lost and the person that has lost what was lost.
Well, I think we can come to a conception of God that works in other religions as well as in Christianity. So in Christianity, we say that he's transcendent, meaning that he isn't within the space time continuum, the universe as we know it.
Not confined by the universe.
God in his essence isn't part of the universe. That's pretty much an orthodox doctrine in Christian churches, which means that he's completely outside of our perceptions, outside of space and time. He's also immanent in all of creation.
Mhm.
So these are complementary ideas. That not only is God completely outside of space and time and beyond our conception of him, but he's also within everything. There's an Orthodox bishop named Callistos Ware who described this as panentheism. He says Orthodox are panentheists, which is different than pantheism, but it's saying that God is in everything. And I think it was Paul, the apostle, who said, in him we live and move and have our being.
Mhm. Yes.
So God is so close to us and so familiar to us that he knows our thoughts before we think them. So the idea that I have is that when we grieve, not only is God there with us in our grief, it's an entrance into the spiritual life, or it can be. When we grieve, God grieves with us. Our grief is God's grief.
I
You mentioned apophatic theology, and also called negative theology, in which we acknowledge that God is not any of the things within space and time that we cataphatically attribute to him. It's complementary to cataphatic theology, but it's to help us remind us that's what revealed to us in cataphatic theology isn't the whole story. These are like signposts. These are signs to tell us something about God, but it's not what God is in his essence. But it's convenient to talk about God being transcendent and unknowable in his essence, but active in his energies. And so, in his essence, we say God is not good, God does not exist, because God doesn't have the conditions of existence. God doesn't have the conditions of being good that we have. So we know what goodness is, or we have an idea of what goodness is, and we can say God is good because we can understand that. That's how we comprehend something about God and about goodness. But what we need to be reminded by the apophatic theology is that when we say God grieves, we're not telling the whole story because we don't know what that actually looks
Mm.
like. God doesn't suffer from loss, so he never has to grieve in the same way that we do. He's already
I love that you brought us back to mystery. If I were to sum up for myself, it's that yes, God is in a sense totally other and totally with me, and
right.
I get to sit in that mystery.
It is a mystery. God is the source of our being. He's the source of all being, the being of the planet, the being of us.
Right.
Probably the first time I really went through a very serious and intense year and a half of grieving. But what I can remember, I remember some of the qualities of the grief as being this fiery pain in my heart. And I remember it was painful. I didn't like the situation that I was in. But I went and had dinner with a friend of mine from church, and he showed me this little booklet that a friend of his had made by people who were suffering from AIDS. And I started reading it, and I was moved. and I had compassion for these people. And that would not have happened to me just prior to my experiencing the grief that I. So I think when we say grief is a doorway into love, it's bringing us back down to who we really are in some ways, so that we can relate not only to ourselves in a compassionate way and to each other, to community, because that's what I was doing, thinking about these people I had nothing in common with. But God is there in all of that. God is the medium through which we move to have compassion for others in our grief.
That's it, Eric.